Liora woke in the Duke's private chambers with no memory of how she got there, her wedding gown still on, her aunt's final whispered words echoing in her skull. "Remember what you owe." Roland stood by the fire, his cane abandoned, his breathing steady, and when she asked if she'd disgraced him, he said something that made her blood run cold. "Your aunt will come, and when she does, you'll understand why I really chose you." The priest pronounced them husband and wife, and the chapel held its breath for the kiss. Liora felt the weight of every eye in the room, hundreds of them, pressing against her skin like needles. The corset cinched her ribs until breathing became arithmetic. The candles blurred into streaks of gold. Heat rose from the packed bodies behind her, thick with perfume and winter wool and something sharper underneath, anticipation dressed as propriety. The Duke of Wesseford stood beside her, broad-shouldered and heavy-set, leaning slightly on his cane. His breathing was controlled, deliberate. His face held no expression she could name, only a stillness that made the air feel heavier. The crowd leaned forward. They wanted the kiss. They wanted to see if she would flinch. They wanted to see if he could claim her without collapsing. They wanted scandal wrapped in satin, humiliation dressed as ceremony. Lord Percival Henshaw murmured something to Lady Winifred Talcott behind his gloved hand. Her fan fluttered as though pity were a performance. Lord Ambrose Kellington smirked like a man who had paid for entertainment and expected value. Lady Mildred Sutherby watched with bright, hungry eyes, the kind that fed on misfortune and called it concern. Leora's knees softened. The chapel tilted, the candles swam. Her gloved hands trembled against the bouquet of white roses that suddenly weighed more than she could hold. She swayed. For half a heartbeat, the entire room inhaled, delighted at the possibility of her collapse. But Roland moved. Not scrambling, not startled, as if he had been waiting for precisely this moment. His arm locked around her waist, firm and steady as iron. He caught her before she fell, before the ton could feast on her public humiliation. His other hand remained on his cane, supporting them both with a strength that did not match the dying man everyone claimed he was. Leora's cheek brushed the wool of his coat. Warm, solid. She smelled cedar and something darker beneath it, old leather and cold air. Then Roland lifted his head and looked at the crowd. His voice came low, calm, sharp enough to cut silk. "Some of you seem disappointed. How strange." A ripple went through the chapel. A gasp here, a stifled laugh there, shock dressed as manners. Roland did not explain. He did not apologize. He did not allow the moment to belong to them. He gathered Liora into his arms properly, one hand beneath her knees, the other supporting her back, and carried her down the aisle. The whispers exploded behind them like thrown stones. "He's taking her away already. He can barely stand. The poor girl. He'll be dead by Christmas. No, look at him. That's not a dying man. That's a man who's angry." Roland's stride was measured, his breathing controlled. His grip adjusted once, just once, as if he would not risk hurting her even as he defied every expectation society had laid at his feet. Leora's vision swam in and out of focus. She felt the shift from candlelight to shadow as they moved through doorways. She heard the rustle of servants stepping aside, the quiet murmur of Mr. Giles Thornbury, the major domo, issuing orders in tones too low to pass. When she came fully awake, she was lying on a chaise near a fire. Her wedding gown spread around her like foam on water. A decanter of crystal-clear water sat on a small table nearby. A maid hovered in the corner, silent as a shadow, eyes downcast. The room was enormous, high ceilings, dark wood paneling, velvet drapes the color of wine. Luxurious, yes, but strangely lonely, as though grandeur had been built to fill the space where warmth should be. Roland stood near the mantel, one hand resting lightly on his cane, the other opening and closing as if he were controlling pain he refused to name. When he saw her eyes open, his shoulders relaxed by a fraction. "You're awake," he said softly. Liora pushed herself upright, her breath catching. The corset still held her like a cage. "Did I disgrace you?" His eyes sharpened, not with anger, with something closer to recognition. "You were pushed past your limit in a room full of people who wanted you to break." That sentence landed differently than pity. It sounded like a verdict. Leora's hands twisted in the lace of her gloves. "They will say I could not bear the sight of you." Roland's mouth twitched without humor. "They will say many things. They always do. Silence settled between them, intimate and uncertain. Then his voice lowered, rougher. Your aunt will come here soon. Burm. Burm. Leora's stomach tightened. Roland's gaze held hers. She believes she owns you. Before Liora could answer, a sharp knock came at the door. The maid flinched. Roland did not. The door opened without permission, and Lady Prudence Blackmere entered as though she had built the house herself. Dove-grey silk, diamonds catching firelight, a face arranged into maternal concern, the way a butcher arranged cuts of meat. My poor, dear child, she sighed, gliding to the chaise and touching Leora's hand as if checking the quality of a purchase. How dreadful, how utterly dreadful. Then her voice dropped, sweet and poisonous. You must control yourself, Liora. You will not shame Wesseford. You will be a dutiful wife for as long as this lasts. She paused, her smile sharpening. And when the inevitable occurs, you will remember your place. Roland's voice cut through the room like a blade through silk. That is enough. Prudence blinked, as if offended by the very idea of boundaries. Your Grace, I am merely guiding my niece through the reality of her situation. Roland stepped forward. The effort was visible. His dignity remained intact. You will leave, now. For a moment, Prudence looked at him and recalculated. She saw something in his expression that made her choose retreat over confrontation. She smoothed her face back into practiced politeness, leaned close to Leora's ear, and whispered one last chain. Do not forget what you owe. Then she swept from the room, leaving only the scent of rosewater and malice. Silence returned, heavier now, intimate in its intensity. Liora sat frozen, shame and anger twisting together in her chest like thorns. Roland moved closer, not invading, not demanding. His tone softened in a way that felt deliberate, as though gentleness required more strength than cruelty. Everything she said was meant to keep you small. Liora swallowed. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Then why did you choose me? The question trembled out of her like a confession she had not meant to make. Roland stared into the fire for a long moment, as if weighing how much truth the night could hold. Because I made a promise, he said finally. Leora's breath caught. To who? His eyes met hers. Something old lived there, something sorrowful, something fiercely controlled. A woman who once saved my life. The fire crackled. The room felt smaller, warmer, dangerous, in a way Liora could not name. And because, Roland continued, his voice rougher now, more intimate, you deserved better than the men your aunt was preparing to sell you to next. Hello everyone, how are you doing today? If you're enjoying this kind of royal scandal and slow burn tension, support Duke's Royal Library by hitting subscribe. And tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far our family reaches. Wesseford House was a fortress dressed as elegance. Liora woke the next morning in a bed so large it felt like an island. The ceiling stretched high above her, painted with scenes of classical myth, gods and mortals tangled in drama too distant to feel real. The curtains were thick velvet, the kind that swallowed sound. The air smelled of beeswax and old wood, and something faintly floral she could not name. She was alone. A maid had come at dawn, silent and efficient, bringing tea and toast on a silver tray. The girl curtsied without meeting Leora's eyes, as though looking directly at a duchess might burn. Liora sat by the window and watched the grounds unfold in the morning light. Gardens stretched toward the horizon, neat and precise as a painting. Gravel paths wound between hedges trimmed into geometric perfection. It was beautiful in the way a museum was beautiful, grand and untouchable, lonely. She thought of her aunt's house in Bath, small and suffocating in its own way, but at least there had been noise, voices. The clatter of daily life. Here, the silence felt deliberate, as though the house itself had learned to hold its breath. A soft knock came at the door. Liora turned. Yes? The door opened, and Mr. Giles Thornbury entered, tall and severe, his coat perfectly pressed. His face was unreadable, the kind of expression servants perfected when they had seen too much. Good morning, Your Grace, he said, his tone respectful but distant. His Grace requests your presence in the library at your convenience. Requests, not orders. Liora nodded. Thank you. Thornbury inclined his head and withdrew, leaving the door slightly ajar. She dressed quickly, her hands shaking only slightly as she laced her bodice. The gown was simpler than the wedding dress, dark green with cream lace at the collar and cuffs. It fit perfectly. Someone had taken measurements without her knowing. The thought unsettled her. She followed a maid through corridors that seemed to multiply, each one lined with portraits of stern-faced ancestors who watched her pass. Wesseford, men and women, generations of them, all looking as though they had mastered the art of quiet judgment. The library was at the far end of the east wing. When Liora entered, she stopped. The room was enormous. Shelves climbed toward the ceiling, packed with leather-bound volumes in shades of burgundy, navy, and forest green. A fire burned in the hearth, casting warm light across thick Persian rugs. 2 tall windows overlooked the gardens, framed by heavy drapes tied back with gold cord. Roland stood near the fire, his back to her. He wore no coat, only shirt sleeves and a waistcoat, the cane leaning against the mantel within reach. His posture was straight, controlled, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. He turned when he heard her footsteps. "Good morning," he said quietly. "Good morning," Liora replied, uncertain where to stand. Roland gestured to a chair near the fire. "Please, sit." She did, smoothing her skirts with trembling hands. He poured tea from a pot already waiting, added cream without asking, and handed her the cup himself. Their fingers brushed briefly, warm porcelain between them. Leora's pulse quickened. Roland settled into the chair opposite hers, moving carefully, as though his body required negotiation with gravity. He did not speak immediately. He simply watched her, his gaze steady but not unkind. "You slept?" he asked. "Yes," Liora said. "Thank you." "You need not thank me for what should be ordinary." The words held no sharpness, only a quiet firmness that made her feel seen in a way she was not accustomed to. Liora sipped her tea. It was perfectly prepared. She hated that she noticed. "You did not answer my question last night," she said softly. Roland's brow lifted. "Why you chose me?" He leaned back slightly, considering her. The firelight caught the angles of his face, the shadow beneath his eyes, the faint lines of pain he carried like invisible scars. "I told you. I made a promise." "To a woman who saved your life," Liora said. "But that does not explain why it had to be me." Roland's jaw tightened. He looked into the fire, and for a moment she thought he would refuse to answer again. Then he spoke. "Your mother." Leora's breath stopped. "I do not understand," she whispered. "When I was 23, I fell ill," Roland said, his voice low and deliberate. "Fever. The physicians said I would not survive the week. Your mother, a governess at the estate where I was staying, refused to accept that. She sat with me every night. She brought herbs, poultices, remedies the doctors scorned. She saved my life." Liora stared at him, her heart pounding. "I promised her," Roland continued, "that if I ever had the means, I would repay the debt. She refused money. She asked for one thing only, that if her daughter ever needed protection, I would offer it." Leora's hands shook. "She died 5 years ago. I know. And my father's debts were not debts," Roland said quietly. "They were fabrications. Your aunt arranged them to force your hand." The room tilted. Liora set the teacup down before she dropped it. "She lied?" "She created urgency," Roland said, "to make you desperate, to make you accept whatever arrangement she chose." Leora's vision blurred. "And you knew?" "I have known for months," Roland said. "I sent inquiries. I discovered what she was planning." "What was she planning?" Roland's gaze hardened. "To sell you to the highest bidder, men who would not have treated you kindly." Names drifted through Leora's memory, faces she had seen at gatherings, men who smiled too widely and stood too close. Edwin, Loxley, Julian Redbourne, men her aunt had invited to tea, men who looked at her as though she were livestock at market. Her stomach turned. "So you bought me instead," she said bitterly. Roland's eyes flashed. "I married you. There is a difference." "Is there?" "Yes." He leaned forward, his voice dropping, intimate and firm. "You are not property, Liora. You are my wife. And tonight, or any night, I will not ask anything of you that you do not give willingly." The air tightened between them. Leora's breath came shallow. She felt heat that had nothing to do with the fire, a pull she could not name, dangerous and unfamiliar. Roland's hand rested on the arm of his chair, fingers tense, as though he were restraining himself from reaching for her. Then he said the line that turned her blood cold and her mind sharp. I did not marry you to die beside you. Liora stared at him. Roland stood slowly, reaching for his cane. It means, Liora, that the rumors of my death are premature. He moved toward the window, his silhouette framed by morning light. And it means, he added quietly, that your aunt is not finished with us. A distant sound echoed through the house. Footsteps, voices. Roland's jaw tightened. She has returned. Lady Prudence Blackmere arrived with the subtlety of a siege. Liora heard the commotion before she saw her. Voices in the entrance hall, sharp and insistent. Mr. Thornbury's measured tones attempting to impose order. The rustle of skirts, the click of heels on marble, the unmistakable sound of a woman who believed doors were suggestions. Roland set his teacup down, with deliberate care. Stay here, he said quietly. No. He turned, surprise flickering across his face. Liora stood, smoothing her skirts. She came for me. I will not hide. Roland studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once, a gesture that felt like respect. They walked together toward the entrance hall, his cane tapping a steady rhythm against the floor. Prudence stood in the center of the grand foyer, surrounded by Mr. Thornbury and two footmen, who looked as though they were attempting to herd a particularly elegant storm. She wore pale blue today, trimmed with fur, her hair arranged in perfect curls beneath a fashionable bonnet. She smiled when she saw Liora. There you are, my dear. I was beginning to worry. Her gaze flicked to Roland, assessing, calculating. Your Grace. Forgive the intrusion. I came only to ensure my niece's comfort. Her comfort, Roland said evenly, is well attended. I'm certain it is. Prudence moved closer, her skirts whispering against the floor. Still, propriety demands family oversight during such delicate times. Delicate, Roland repeated, his tone flat. Yes, Prudence's smile sharpened. A young bride, a husband in uncertain health. Difficult circumstances require careful guidance. I require no guidance, Liora said, her voice steadier than she felt. Prudence turned to her, and for a moment the mask of concern slipped. Something colder showed beneath, reptilian and patient. Of course you do, darling. You've always needed direction. It is not a failing, it is simply your nature. The words landed like blows dressed as kindness. Roland stepped forward. Mrs. Blackmere, your concern has been noted. It is no longer required. Prudence's eyes glittered. I'm afraid, Your Grace, that is not your decision to make. Liora remains my responsibility until she is of age. She is 18, Roland said, and she is my wife. The law, Prudence said softly, is less clear when questions arise regarding the validity of consent. The room went still. Liora felt ice slide down her spine. Prudence continued, her voice pleasant, conversational. A young woman, barely of age, pressured into marriage under threat of ruin. A settlement signed in haste. Witnesses who might recall her distress. You would not, Liora whispered. I would do what is necessary, Prudence said, turning to her fully. To protect your interests, of course. To ensure you are not taken advantage of by those who might see you as convenient. Roland's knuckles whitened on his cane. You will leave my house, he said, each word deliberate and cold. Now, Prudence's smile did not falter. I think not. Not until I am satisfied that my niece is being treated appropriately. She stepped closer to Liora, lowering her voice to a whisper meant to carry. Remember, darling, you are a wife today, but widows have far more freedom. Do not jeopardize your future for foolish sentiment. Roland moved between them, not aggressively, but with the finality of a door closing. Mr. Thornbury, he said, his voice carrying across the hall. Thornbury stepped forward immediately. Prudence's face tightened. For a moment, genuine anger flashed in her eyes, raw and venomous. This is not finished, she said quietly. It is, Roland replied. Prudence looked past him to Liora. You owe me everything. Do not forget that when you are tempted to play at independence. Then she turned, her skirts sweeping across the marble, and walked toward the door with the measured grace of someone who had not lost, but merely postponed victory. The door closed behind her with a heavy finality. Silence filled the hall. Liora's hands were shaking. She clasped them together, willing them to stop. Roland turned to her, his expression gentler now, though strain showed in the lines around his eyes. She will not stop. Liora said quietly. No, Roland agreed. She will not. What does she want? Roland glanced toward the door, as though Prudence's shadow still lingered. And if she challenges the marriage? She will fail. Roland's voice held certainty. But she will cause scandal in the attempt. That is her weapon. Reputation. Liora looked up at him. Then we are trapped. No, the word came firm, absolute. Roland reached out slowly, giving her time to step away if she wished. When she did not, his hand covered hers, warm and solid. We are not trapped, Liora. We are choosing to fight. The touch sent warmth through her, unsettling and comforting at once. Why? She whispered. Why risk your reputation for me? Roland's thumb brushed across her knuckles, a gesture so small and deliberate it felt more intimate than anything she had ever experienced. Because everything she said was designed to keep you small, he said quietly, and I will not allow it. Leora's breath caught. For a moment, they stood there in the vast entrance hall, surrounded by marble and portraits and the weight of ancestral expectation, and none of it mattered. Then Roland released her hand, stepping back with visible effort. There is something you need to see, he said. The room was small, tucked into a corner of the library's second floor. Roland unlocked it with a key he kept on a chain beneath his waistcoat. The door swung open on silent hinges, revealing a space that felt less like storage and more like sanctuary. Shelves lined the walls, filled not with books but with ledgers, letters bound in ribbon, documents sealed with wax. A single desk sat beneath a window that overlooked the gardens. A lamp burned low, as though someone tended it regularly. Roland gestured for Liora to enter. She stepped inside, her pulse quickening. What is this place? My mother's study, Roland said quietly. She kept records. Everything that mattered to this family, she documented. He moved to the desk and opened a drawer, withdrawing a leather portfolio tied with black cord. He set it on the desk and untied it carefully. Inside were letters, dozens of them. Some old, the paper yellowed with age. Others recent, the ink still dark. Roland selected one and handed it to Liora. Read this. Liora unfolded the letter, her hands trembling. The handwriting was elegant, precise. My dearest Roland, I write this knowing I may not have much time left. The illness has progressed, and the physicians offer little hope. But I do not write to burden you with my sorrows. I write to ask a favor. My daughter, Liora, is young still, barely into her teens. Her father is a good man, but impractical. Should anything happen to me, I fear she will be left vulnerable. My sister Prudence has offered to care for her, but I do not trust her intentions. If ever you have the means, Roland, and if ever my daughter is in need, I ask that you remember the kindness we shared. Protect her, if you can, not as charity, but as a debt repaid between friends who once saw the best in one another. With affection and gratitude, Eleanor James. Leora's vision blurred. She read the letter again, her mother's voice echoing in every word. She knew, Liora whispered. She knew what Prudence was. Yes. Liora looked up at Roland, tears burning in her eyes. And you kept this promise. I did. For 9 years? Roland's jaw tightened. I made inquiries after your mother died. I learned of your father's passing. I learned of your situation. And I waited. For what? For the moment your aunt would overreach. His voice turned cold. I knew she would. I simply had to be ready when she did. Liora set the letter down carefully, as though it might shatter. So you married me to honor my mother's memory. No. The word came sharp, almost angry. Roland stepped closer, his eyes burning with something Liora could not name. I married you because your aunt was negotiating with men who would have destroyed you. I married you because I could not stomach the thought of you becoming one more woman sacrificed to ambition and greed. He paused, his breathing uneven. And I married you, he said quietly, because when I saw you standing in that parlor, silent and composed and fighting to remain invisible, I recognized something I thought I had lost. What? Liora whispered. Hope. The air between them felt charged, dangerous, alive. Leora's heart pounded. She felt the pull toward him, undeniable and terrifying. Roland lifted his hand slowly, giving her every opportunity to refuse. His fingers brushed her cheek, feather-light, reverent. I will not lie to you, Liora. I am not the man society believes I am. I am not dying, but I am not whole, either. This body. He gestured vaguely, frustration flickering across his face. It has betrayed me in ways that matter. Then the rumors. Our exaggerations built on partial truths. His hand dropped. I was ill, yes. Gravely so. But I survived. The weakness remained. The pain remained. Society decided that made me a tragedy. I let them believe it because it kept predators at a distance. Liora absorbed this, her mind racing. So, you used your reputation as armor? Yes. And now? Roland's gaze held hers. Now I am tired of armor, and I am tired of watching people I care about suffer because I was too cautious to act. People you care about, Liora repeated softly. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, close enough to see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the silver threading through his dark hair. Liora, her name on his lips, felt intimate, a secret shared. I will not claim rights I have not earned. I will not demand what you do not wish to give, but I need you to understand something. What? You are not temporary. You are not a convenient solution to your aunt's scheming or my mother's dying wish. You are my wife, and I intend to honor that. Liora's breath came shallow. She felt heat rising in her, unfamiliar and overwhelming. What does that mean? She whispered. Roland's hand found hers again, his thumb tracing slow circles against her palm. It means, he said, his voice dropping to something rougher, more vulnerable, that I will protect you. I will stand between you and anyone who seeks to harm you. And I will wait, for as long as necessary, until you decide whether you can bear the sight of me enough to build something real. Liora's pulse thundered in her ears. I have never found you unbearable, she said softly. Something flickered in Roland's eyes. Surprise, relief, something darker, more dangerous. Then, perhaps, he said quietly, we have a chance. His hand slid from hers to her waist, a question, not a demand. Liora's breath hitched. She could step away. She knew that. He would let her, but she did not want to. She leaned closer, just slightly, enough for him to know. Roland's other hand came up to cradle her face, his touch gentle despite the strength she could feel beneath it. Tell me to stop, he murmured. No. The word came out breathless, certain. Roland closed the distance between them, his lips brushing hers with a tenderness that made her knees weak. The kiss was slow, careful, as though he were learning her. His hand tightened slightly at her waist, anchoring her. Her fingers found the fabric of his waistcoat, clutching, needing something solid to hold on to. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing unsteadily, Roland rested his forehead against hers. I did not marry you to die beside you, Liora, he whispered. I married you to live. And in that moment, she believed him. Quick pause. If you've made it this far and you're still not subscribed, don't do Duke's Royal Library like that. These stories take heart, time, and real effort to bring to you. Support the channel now, subscribe, and drop your location in the comments so I can shout you out in the next one. Morning arrived with rumors dressed as breakfast. Liora woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the low murmur of voices below. She dressed quickly, choosing a gown of deep burgundy that made her feel older, steadier, more like the Duchess society expected her to become. When she descended to the breakfast room, she found Roland already seated, reading correspondence with a frown that deepened with each letter. He looked up when she entered, his expression softening. Good morning, Liora replied, taking the seat a footman pulled out for her. Tea appeared at her elbow. Toast, jam, soft-boiled eggs, arranged with precision. The servants moved like clockwork, efficient and invisible. Roland set the letters aside. Did you sleep well? Yes. Better than she had in years, though she did not say so. He studied her for a moment, as though confirming she was real. Then Mr. Thornbury entered, his face carefully neutral. Your Grace, a number of callers have arrived, requesting an audience. Roland's jaw tightened. Who? Lady Winifred Talcott, Lord Percival Henshaw, Lady Mildred Sutherby. Thornbury paused. And Lord Edwin Locksley. Leora's stomach dropped. Roland set his teacup down with deliberate care. Inform them I am not receiving visitors today. They were insistent, Your Grace. Then they may be insistent elsewhere. Thornbury inclined his head and withdrew. Leora's hands twisted in her lap. Locksley came here? Roland's gaze sharpened. You know him? My aunt invited him to tea. Twice. Leora's voice dropped. He stood too close. He asked questions that were not appropriate. Roland's expression went cold, the kind of cold that preceded violence dressed as civility. "He will not come near you again. He is a lord, and I am a duke." Roland's voice held steel. "Rank has privileges, Liora. I intend to use them." Before she could respond, raised voices echoed from the entrance hall. Roland stood, reaching for his cane. "Stay here." "No." His eyes met hers, surprise and something else, approval, flickering across his face. They walked together toward the entrance hall. The scene was chaos, dressed as propriety. Lady Winifred Talcott stood near the door, her ostrich feather hat quivering with indignation. Lord Percival Henshaw lounged against a marble pillar, smirking as though he had come for theatre. Lady Mildred Sutherby clutched her reticule like a weapon, her eyes bright with malicious curiosity. And Lord Edwin Locksley stood in the centre, tall and fair-haired and smiling with the kind of charm that made Leora's skin crawl. "Your Grace," he said smoothly when Roland appeared. "Forgive the intrusion. We came merely to offer congratulations." "Your congratulations," Roland said evenly, "are noted and unnecessary." Locksley's smile widened. "Surely you cannot begrudge old friends their concern." "We are not friends." The words landed like stones in still water. Lady Talcott gasped. Lord Henshaw's smirk faltered. Lady Sutherby's fan fluttered with excitement. Locksley's expression remained pleasant, but something darker moved beneath it. "A pity," he said lightly. "I had hoped we might become better acquainted. After all, your lovely bride and I have already met." Liora felt Roland stiffen beside her. "At her aunt's invitation," Locksley continued, his gaze sliding to Liora. "Such a charming afternoon. We spoke of many things." "We spoke of nothing," Liora said, her voice stronger than she felt. Locksley's eyebrows rose. "How unkind, Your Grace. I distinctly recall a most pleasant conversation about your future prospects." "You recall incorrectly." Roland stepped forward, his presence filling the space between them. "Lord Locksley," he said quietly, dangerously, "you will leave my house. You will not return. And if I learn that you have approached my wife again, in any capacity, you will find that my ill health does not prevent me from defending what is mine." Locksley's smile froze. For a moment, genuine calculation flickered in his eyes. Then he laughed, light and dismissive. "Of course, Your Grace. I meant no offence." He bowed with exaggerated courtesy and turned toward the door. As he passed Liora, he murmured just loud enough for her to hear, "A shame. You would have been far more amusing elsewhere." Roland's cane struck the floor with a crack that made everyone flinch. "Out!" Locksley left, his footsteps echoing across the marble. The others followed quickly, suddenly eager to escape. When the door closed, silence fell like a curtain. Liora released a breath she had not known she was holding. Roland turned to her, his face still tight with controlled fury. "Did he touch you?" "No. But the way he looked at me—" "I know." Roland's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "I know." Mr. Thornbury appeared from the shadows. "Your Grace." A messenger arrived during the commotion. He held out a sealed letter. Roland took it, his expression shifting as he recognized the wax seal. He broke it open and read quickly, his face growing darker with each line. "What is it?" Liora asked. Roland folded the letter carefully. "Your aunt has filed a petition with the courts. She claims the marriage was conducted under duress and seeks to have it annulled." Leora's world tilted. "Can she do that?" "She can try." Roland's voice was grim. "She has witnesses. People who will claim you appeared distressed at the ceremony, that I coerced you through financial manipulation. But you did not. Truth and appearance are not always the same in the eyes of the law." Leora's mind raced. "If the marriage is annulled, you return to her custody. She resumes her plans for you." Roland's jaw clenched. "I will not allow it." "Goma, how can you stop it?" Roland looked at her, something fierce and protective blazing in his eyes. "By giving them no grounds to question the validity of our union." Leora's breath caught. "What does that mean?" Roland stepped closer, his voice dropping to something intimate and urgent. "It means, Liora, that we must appear before society not as strangers bound by contract, but as a true married couple, united, undeniable." Heat flooded through her. "You mean—" "I mean we attend every event, every gathering, every opportunity to show them that this marriage is real." His hand cupped her cheek. And if you will permit it, we make it real in truth. Liora's heart pounded. She knew what he was offering, what he was asking. Not just protection, partnership, something deeper. And if I refuse, she whispered, then I will find another way to fight her. I will not force you, Liora. Not even to save myself. She believed him. That was the terrible, wonderful truth. I do not refuse, she said quietly. Relief and something darker, hungrier, flashed across Roland's face. Then we have work to do. The plan was simple in theory, treacherous in execution. They would attend the Sutherby ball, the most anticipated event of the winter season, and present themselves not as a dying duke and his reluctant bride, but as a couple society could not dismiss. Liora stood in her dressing room 3 days later, staring at the gown that had been delivered that morning. It was midnight blue silk, cut lower than anything she had ever worn. The bodice was fitted, the skirts full, embroidered with silver thread that caught the light like stars. A matching set of sapphires lay in a velvet box, a gift from Roland with a note that simply read, "You will outshine them all." Her maid, a quiet girl named Mary, helped her dress, her hands deft and efficient. When Liora looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked like a duchess. She looked like someone who belonged. A knock came at the door. "Come in," Liora said, her voice steadier than she felt. Roland entered and stopped. He wore black evening dress, perfectly tailored, his cane replaced with a polished walking stick that looked more decorative than necessary. His hair was brushed back, his jaw clean-shaven. He looked every inch the Duke of Wesseford, powerful and controlled. But his eyes, when they met hers, held something unguarded. "You are breathtaking," he said quietly. Liora felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Thank you." He crossed the room slowly and offered his arm. "Are you ready?" Liora placed her hand on his arm, feeling the solid strength beneath the fine wool. "I am terrified." "Good," Roland said, a faint smile touching his lips. "So am I. It means we understand the stakes." They descended the stairs together, a footman opening the door to reveal the carriage waiting in the drive. The ride to Sutherby House was silent, tension humming between them like a plucked string. When they arrived, the ball was already in full swing. Light spilled from every window. Music drifted into the night air, violins and piano weaving together in elegant harmony. Carriages lined the drive, disgorging lords and ladies in silk and jewels. Roland helped Liora down, his hand warm and steady. "Remember," he murmured as they approached the entrance, "we are united, we are certain, we give them nothing to doubt." Liora nodded, her heart pounding. They were announced at the top of the grand staircase. His Grace the Duke of Wesseford, and Her Grace the Duchess of Wesseford. The ballroom fell silent, every head turned, every eye fixed on them. Liora felt the weight of judgment, curiosity, and malice pressing down like a physical force. Then Roland squeezed her hand gently and began the descent. They moved together, his pace measured but steady, no cane, no visible weakness. Liora matched him, her head high, her expression calm. Whispers erupted like wildfire. "He's walking without assistance. She looks radiant." They look together. Lady Sutherby materialized at the bottom of the stairs, her smile sharp as glass. "Your Graces, how delightful you could attend." "Lady Sutherby," Roland said smoothly, "thank you for the invitation." Her gaze raked over Liora. "You look well, my dear. Marriage clearly agrees with you." "It does," Liora said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. Lady Sutherby's smile tightened. "How lovely. Do enjoy the evening." She swept away, already whispering to the nearest cluster of guests. Roland led Liora into the ballroom proper. The orchestra was playing a waltz. Couples swirled across the floor in a kaleidoscope of color and movement. Roland turned to her. "Will you dance with me?" Liora hesitated. "Your leg." "Will manage." His eyes held a challenge. "Unless you are ashamed to be seen with me." "Never." The word came fierce, immediate. Roland's expression softened. He led her onto the floor. His hand found her waist. Hers rested on his shoulder. Their joined hands lifted. The music swelled. They moved. Roland led with surprising grace, his movements controlled and deliberate. Liora followed, her body remembering lessons from years ago, muscle memory taking over where thought failed. They turned, and the world blurred around them. "Everyone is watching," Liora whispered. "Let them," Roland said. "Let them see that you chose me willingly." "I did." His hand tightened at her waist, pulling her infinitesimally closer. Then show them. Liora met his gaze and smiled, genuine and unguarded. The ballroom erupted in murmurs. They danced through 2 more waltzes, ignoring the stares, the whispers, the undercurrent of scandal that followed them like perfume. When they finally stepped off the floor, breathless and flushed, Lord Henshaw approached with a glass of champagne and a predatory smile. "Your Grace, you dance remarkably well for a man at death's door." Roland accepted the champagne but did not drink. "Rumors of my demise, Lord Henshaw, have been greatly exaggerated." "Indeed." Henshaw's gaze slid to Liora. "And your bride seems quite comfortable, as she should be," Roland said evenly. "She is my wife, of course." Henshaw's smile widened. "Though I understand her aunt has raised concerns about the nature of the arrangement." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Roland's voice went cold. "Her aunt has no standing. The marriage is legal, binding, and consummated." Leora's breath caught. Henshaw's eyebrows rose. "Is it?" "Yes." The lie fell smooth and absolute. Henshaw studied them both, calculation flickering behind his jovial mask. Then he shrugged. "Well, that settles the matter, I suppose." "Den," he wandered off, already spreading the new rumor. Liora turned to Roland, her cheeks burning. "I gave him a truth that will protect you," Roland said quietly, "even if it is premature." "Premature," Liora repeated, her voice barely a whisper. Roland's gaze held hers, intense and dark. The ballroom spun around them, music and light and watching eyes, but all Liora could see was him. She stopped, uncertain. A commotion near the entrance saved her from answering. Lady Prudence Blackmere swept into the ballroom, resplendent in silver and diamonds, her expression serene as a saint. She saw them immediately, and smiled. Prudence moved through the crowd like a ship cutting through water, guests parting before her with the instinct of prey sensing a predator. She stopped a few feet from Roland and Liora, her smile perfect, her eyes glacial. "Your Graces, what a pleasant surprise, Mrs. Blackmere," Roland said, his tone flat. Prudence's gaze lingered on Liora, assessing, cataloguing every detail. "You look well, my dear. The role of Duchess suits you." "Thank you," Liora said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Though I confess," Prudence continued, "I worry about you. Marriage is a significant responsibility, especially when entered into under such unusual circumstances." Problemarity. Was not Cars. Marriage is Cars. There was nothing unusual about it, Roland said quietly. "No." Prudence's smile sharpened. A marriage arranged in haste, a bride barely of age, a groom whose health has been the subject of much speculation. She paused delicately. Some might question whether true consent was given. The crowd around them stilled, listening with barely concealed fascination. Roland stepped forward, his presence filling the space. "The only question worth answering, Mrs. Blackmere, is why you persist in spreading doubt about a marriage that does not concern you." "It concerns me," Prudence said, her voice rising slightly. "Because Liora is my responsibility. I raised her. I cared for her when no one else would. I will not stand by and watch her be taken advantage of." "Taken advantage of?" Leora's voice cut through the tension, stronger than she had ever heard it. "Is that what you call selling me to the highest bidder?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Prudence's face went white. "How dare you? How dare I?" Liora stepped forward, years of controlled silence breaking apart. "You lied about debts to force my hand. You paraded men before me like I was livestock at market. You told me I owed you everything, that gratitude was the price of survival." "I gave you a home," Prudence hissed. "You gave me a cage." The words rang across the ballroom. Prudence's mask cracked. Fury blazed in her eyes, raw and undisguised. "You ungrateful, foolish girl. I saved you from ruin. I made you presentable. I gave you opportunities you could never have earned on your own." "You sold me," Liora said, her voice shaking but clear. "And when Roland offered me protection, you called it coercion. But the only person who ever coerced me was you." Silence fell, absolute and electric. Prudence looked around at the watching crowd, realizing too late that she had lost control of the narrative. Roland's voice came quiet, deadly. "You will leave, Mrs. Blackmere. You will withdraw your petition, and you will never approach my wife again." "Or what?" Prudence's voice trembled with rage. "You think your title protects you? You think society will accept a marriage built on lies? It is not built on lies, Roland said. It is built on a promise I made to a woman worth 10 of you, a woman who saved my life and asked only that I protect her daughter if ever she needed it. Comprehension dawned on Prudence's face. Eleanor, yes. Prudence's laugh was bitter, sharp. So this is sentiment. How noble, how utterly pointless. Eleanor is dead. Her wishes died with her. Her wishes, Roland said coldly, live in every word of the letter she wrote me. A letter I have kept. A letter that proves your machinations began the moment she was buried. Prudence went still. I know about the fabricated debts, Roland continued. I know about the men you contacted, Lord Loxley, Lord Redbourne, men whose reputations should have kept them far from any innocent woman. I have records, Mrs. Blackmere, correspondence, witnesses. Prudence's face drained of colour. If you pursue this petition, Roland said quietly, I will present all of it to the court. Your guardianship will be questioned, your reputation will be destroyed, and Liora will be free of you forever. The ballroom held its breath. Prudence stared at him, calculation warring with fury. Finally, she turned to Liora. You will regret this. No, Liora said softly. I regret nothing. Prudence's mouth twisted. Then she turned and swept from the ballroom, her skirts hissing against the floor like a serpent's retreat. The crowd erupted into whispers, shocked and delighted. Roland took Liora's hand and raised it to his lips, a gesture of public claim and private tenderness. Well done, he murmured. Liora's knees felt weak. I think I need air. They retreated to the terrace, stepping into the cool night. The music continued inside, muffled now, distant. Lanterns hung from trees, casting soft light across the gardens. Liora leaned against the balustrade, breathing deeply. She will not forgive this, she said quietly. No, Roland agreed. But she will not win either. Liora turned to him. You would have ruined her reputation for me. Yes. Why? Roland stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her face. Because you deserve to be protected, because your mother trusted me with something precious, and because, he paused, his thumb brushing her cheekbone, because somewhere between the chapel and now, protecting you stopped being an obligation and became a need. Liora's breath caught. Roland, I know I am not the husband you would have chosen, he said quietly. I know this body is not what you deserve, but I can offer you honesty, partnership, respect, and if you will allow it, affection that has nothing to do with duty. Tears burned in Liora's eyes. You think I would not have chosen you? Roland's expression turned wary. I am not blind to what I am. Neither am I. Liora reached up, covering his hand with hers. I see a man who kept a promise for 9 years. A man who stood between me and cruelty. A man who gave me choices when I had none. Her voice dropped, intimate and fierce. I see a man worth choosing. Roland's breath hitched, then he kissed her. Not carefully this time, not tentatively. This kiss was need and promise and surrender all at once. Liora's hands found his shoulders, pulling him closer. His arms wrapped around her, holding her as though she were something infinitely precious and desperately wanted. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Roland rested his forehead against hers. Come home with me, he whispered. I am home, Liora said softly. I have been since you caught me. Roland's arms tightened around her. Inside, the music played on. Society would talk for weeks about what they had witnessed tonight. Scandal and romance twisted together, impossible to separate. But here, in the lantern-lit gardens, with the man who had chosen her and the future she was choosing in return, Liora felt something she had not felt in 5 long years. Safe, wanted, free. We should return, Roland said eventually, though he made no move to release her. Not yet, Liora murmured. Let them wait. Roland smiled against her hair. As you wish, Your Grace. And for a moment, the world beyond the terrace ceased to matter. They had fought society. They had faced down cruelty. They had turned obligation into something real. The future remained uncertain. Prudence would not vanish simply because she had retreated tonight. Questions would linger. Gossip would continue, but they would face it together, as partners, as husband and wife, as 2 people who had found something unexpected in an arrangement neither had wanted, and both had come to treasure. Roland took her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For giving me a reason to stop pretending I was dying. Liora smiled, genuine and bright. And thank you for giving me permission to live. They returned to the ballroom together, hand in hand, and danced until dawn. You stayed with me to the end, and I really appreciate you for it. Thank you. This is only the beginning of Roland and Liora's story. What happens when Prudence refuses to accept defeat? What secrets still lie hidden in Wesseford's halls? And what happens when a marriage built on protection transforms into something far more dangerous, passionate, and real? If you want to see where this story goes next, the promises kept and broken, the scandals yet to unfold, make sure you're subscribed to Duke's Royal Library right now. We have more aristocratic drama, slow burn romance, and Victorian intrigue waiting for you. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think Prudence will give up, or is she planning her revenge? And which moment between Roland and Liora made your heart race? Then, most importantly, rate this story in a scale of 1 to 10 to enable us do better. Until next time, this is Duke's Royal Library, bringing you the stories that make history feel like it's happening now. Thank you for being part of our family. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.